Hello and welcome back to another episode. There hasn't really been too much going on per se, but I think definitely the biggest thing that, especially in Indiana, that happened was Mike Woodson just absolutely running the transfer portal. We picked up, we picked up 3 transfers. We picked up Bryson Tucker, Miles Rice from Washington State. He transferred from Washington State, and Omar Ballo from Arizona. And Miles Rice and Omar Ballo and Bryson Tucker are all 3 transfers that are in the top 20. They're the top 20 transfers, Omar Ballo being number 1 out of all the people in the transfer portal. And this is really good for us too, just for Indiana, because I mean, the Pac-12 always develops a lot of good players, and they always do relatively well in the tournament. We also, like, from the Pac-12 specifically, we also picked up Keenan Carlisle from Stanford, and I think with the addition of Miles Rice and Keenan Carlisle, that might help our three-point game a little bit, because one of the main problems with that we had, at least this year with IU basketball, was just not really being able to utilize the three-point line a lot. But I think with these new additions and with Omar Ballo dominating in the center, it's going to be very easy for IU to start hitting more three-pointers, which I think will be huge, allowing for IU to hopefully beat Purdue twice, because we love Purdue's downfall, of course, and to make the tournament again and possibly even make a run in March. I mean, March is a long ways away now, so maybe I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, but I mean, yeah, right now the future looks great for IU basketball. There's also a lot of other players that transferred, not to IU, but to the Big Ten, like, just overall. I mean, with the addition of 4 new schools in the conference, more people going to the Big Ten was inevitable. But, I mean, there's a lot of people going to, I guess, your classic Big Ten. I guess I'm calling them classic Big Ten teams, since the conference is changing next year. But Illinois, they lost Diana, Sincere Harris, and Amani Hensberry. But they also got, in return, Jake Davis, Trey White, Kylan Boswell, and Kerry Booth. So they got, with Illinois' new additions, I think they're not going to really skip a beat next year. I think they're still going to be a force in at least the Big Ten. I mean, they did kind of make a run in the tournament this year, which, I mean, good for them, because in the past couple times they made the tournaments, they choked big. But, I mean, now it looks good for them. Iowa lost people. They didn't gain anyone. They lost Dasonte Bowen, Tony Perkins, and Patrick McCaffrey. And not gaining anyone for Iowa is not great, because Iowa in the Big Ten is one of the better three-point shooting teams. So, I mean, if they lose anyone, it's not really good for them, I don't think. But, I mean, not gaining anyone, especially with the exodus of transfers just flooding the Big Ten right now, I don't think is good for Iowa. And, I mean, there's some other Big Ten teams that also are kind of having this problem are Michigan. But Michigan, I think, is in the process. Like, they're having a lot of departures right now just because a change in coaching. Like, they have a new coach. The old Florida Atlantic coach is now the head coach at Michigan. So Michigan is going to be projected to have a lot more people transferring there. It's just they haven't done that yet. Right now, it's just the departures that are leaving Michigan right now, whether they follow the old coach or they just try something new. Michigan State is also one of those teams, but they only had one departure, so their roster next year is looking like it's probably going to be generally the same, depending also on who they pick up, on who they recruit from high school. I did see that Tom Izzo has been working very hard on the high school recruiting. He's been going to a lot of. I think he went to the Michigan state championship game, or for high school. I think he was either in Michigan or somewhere else, but I know it was he went to a high school state championship game, and he brought the entire Michigan State team with him, which honestly that is awesome. That is so cool. But Minnesota, they have a lot of departures. They've got 5 departures, no additions. That's not good for Minnesota. But I mean, Minnesota hasn't really done too much in the Big Ten the past few years anyway when it comes to basketball. So I don't really even though they have a lot of people leaving, I don't think it's really going to change their standing in the conference unless they pick up a lot of good recruits. But yeah. Nebraska. Now this one is kind of surprising just because, I mean, Nebraska kind of came out of nowhere seemingly last year. They went from being preseason ranked 13th to 3rd at the end of the season. But they have a lot of departures. But they are picking up Andrew Morgan from North Dakota State. So I think Nebraska hopefully will stay a contender in the Big Ten. I thought their season and the way they played was very entertaining, just because they were really hitting from behind the 3-point line, and even though they lost to Texas A&M, it was still great to see them in the tournament. Northwestern also doesn't have any additions right now, but they also only have one departure, and that's Parker Strauss. I think that might hurt them a little bit, but Northwestern is they're sneakily good. They're consistently sneakily good. But I mean, Northwestern will figure something out. Ohio State has a lot of people that are leaving and going there. I'm not really surprised, just because, I mean, Ohio State is very attractive athletic program no matter what sport you're trying to go into. But with their basketball program, it's a little complicated, I think, just because it looks good from the outside and stuff, but then you play for them and then stuff happens and then you're like, I don't want to go here anymore. Then they leave. One of the additions that Ohio State is going to have, though, is Aaron Bradshaw from Kentucky. And, I mean, in large part, that's because of why am I blanking on his name right now? How am I blanking? Okay, he's at Arkansas now. Why can I not? Hold on. John Calipari. Yeah, Calipari. When Calipari left Kentucky, lots of people were leaving Kentucky, so not really surprised there. But with coaching, there's a lot of movement, not just with the transfer portal, but just a lot of movement with the coaching. I mean, it kind of started with John Calipari leaving Kentucky, then he picked up the job at Arkansas, and then the BYU coach is now the Kentucky coach. The old Arkansas coach is now the USC coach. The USC coach, I think he's still working on his contract, but last I heard, I think it was Temple that he was going to be at, or that he was talking. That was the school he was talking to. Last I heard, I think. Oregon, they've got 2 departures, no additions, but I mean, Oregon, they do have a good Hall of Fame coach, and I think being on the West Coast is kind of an advantage for them, but they also they bring in a lot of money, so they'll be able to figure something out. Penn State, they were a little bit surprising this year, I think, in the Big Ten tournament. Season was for them, I think. It wasn't the 2022-2023 season that Penn State had. That was a fun season for Penn State, I think, like when they made the tournament and they went on a run in the Big Ten tournament, made it to the championship as a double-digit seed. It was fun to watch, but I think they just had a change in coaching staff, and not this year, but last year, like after they made their run, they had a little change. But yeah, Penn State has a lot of departures. One addition from Xavier, Kachi Ze, I think. Why are people's names so hard to pronounce? I think Penn State might be interesting to watch next year. We'll see. Now, Purdue, I'm kind of surprised Purdue doesn't have any new additions. I mean, especially after their little run that they had at the championship. But they're losing. I mean, they're obviously already losing Edey. He's going to the draft. It was his last year no matter what. So he's gone, finally. I'm sure that's what we're all thinking. He's been there for so long. But Purdue is losing Ethan Morton and Mason Gillis. I mean, honestly, the way Purdue played this year, I don't think the departures are really going to change too much. I think what's probably going to end up happening if Purdue doesn't find a center that can replace Edey, they're going to be really relying on Fletcher Lawyer and why can I not think of his name? I'm so bad with names today. Purdue's going to have to switch their style of play probably if they can't find a center to replace Edey. That's the point. Okay, Rutgers. Rutgers has a lot of additions and departures. I don't really know why, but there's a lot of names in both sections here. No one that I can think of that you probably know, but Rutgers is always kind of sneaky sometimes, at least in the regular season. This year, not so much, but in the past couple years, Rutgers has been kind of sneaky. I mean, they've made the tournament a couple times. But yeah, I mean, Rutgers is always an interesting team to watch. UCLA, they're a new addition to the Big Ten. They're not really seeing a lot of departures or additions. They've got 3 departures, 2 additions. I think probably the most notable addition is Kobe Johnson from USC going over there, just because rival school. In-state rival school, now still in conference rival school since USC is moving over to the Big Ten. It's a very old, deep rivalry. I mean, we kind of saw this a lot with the NFL too, with the free agency. Lots of teams moving, or lots of players moving to different teams that are in rival teams, like going from the Giants to the Eagles, Saquon Barkley. That's a little strange, I think, just because you go from playing for a certain team to now playing against them twice, maybe 3 times a year, depending on where you land in the playoffs. I mean, it's kind of the same thing with college basketball too, because, I mean, you play teams twice in the regular season. You might meet them again in your conference tournament, and maybe you meet them again in the March Madness tournament, depending on how things go. But yeah, the fact that these 2 teams could play 4 times in a season and switching between them is interesting. I wonder what UCLA offered Kobe Johnson to go there. USC, they're seeing a lot of departures, not entirely surprised. I mean, we talked about the head coach leaving for, I believe, Temple or somewhere else. Like he got let go. Lots of people leaving. I think probably the most notable person leaving is Bronny James, just because, I mean, his last name's James. That's pretty much it. He had some good games, but I think overall his season was not where I think his expectations were or where our expectations were. So I think this was not a good season for him. So I think him going, I don't know where he's going to go. If he's going to depart for the draft or if he's going to find another team. I heard he's heavily considering Ohio State. Maybe. We'll see. It would be interesting, though, just because, you know, his family lives out in LA, so I don't know. I know his dad likes going to his games, so yeah. Then the last two Big Ten teams, you've got Washington and Wisconsin. Washington, they've 3 people are leaving them, but they are getting one person, Mekhi Mason from Rice. I don't really know a lot about him, but I mean, I like to think that if you get an addition, that's a good thing, especially if they're good on their team, like if they're a starter on their team and they want to go somewhere else and they're interested in your program because they think that they fit better there, then I think that means hopefully that they'll do better. But yeah, Wisconsin, they've got 3 people leaving them and no additions. Wisconsin basketball has kind of been on the downfall, I feel like, lately, ever since Bo Ryan left a little while ago. I mean, they've made the March Madness tournament pretty consistently, but I mean, they haven't really done much of anything in the tournament. I mean, JMU just absolutely crushed them like they were nothing. Like they made Wisconsin look really, really bad. So yeah, I'm not really with the new additions of Washington, UCLA, USC, and Oregon. I'm not really sure how Wisconsin is going to fare in this new Big Ten conference. Because I think Wisconsin is typically consistently a top 5 Big Ten school like every year. The past 5 years, at least, it didn't really seem to matter who the coach was. But I think with these new additions, Wisconsin is going to get bumped out of that spot. I think UCLA will probably take that spot. I think out of these 4 schools that are joining the Big Ten, I think the 2 schools that are probably in a good position to move into the top 5 for Big Ten are Oregon and UCLA, just because UCLA already has a great history in basketball. They're a very well-established program, arguably the winningest college basketball program in history, just because they have the most March Madness championship wins. I think they have 9, actually. But, like, they have a lot more than the next few people. I think, like, the next number down is, like, 6. So, like, it jumps from 9 to 6. In Oregon, they've been better. I mean, this year, I think, was definitely a great year for them. They kind of came out of nowhere a little bit. But again, like I said earlier, they have great coach. They've, at least in the past 10, 15 years, they've been consistent in the tournament, and they always do well. Oregon always does well. They just need to win more championships, I guess, if they want to further cement themselves in college basketball history as one of the best programs. But I guess the last thing that I'm going to talk about is what does this mean for Indiana basketball with these new additions of these teams? Like, what what is going to be different? I mean, obviously they're going to be traveling more. Away games are going to be very difficult. I mean, for both the West Coast schools and the Midwest schools, but I think it's definitely going to change the dynamic of Indiana basketball, just because I think with the new additions of these Pac-12 teams going to the Big Ten, Pac-12 is very, like, their style of play is very fast. It's the three-point line is very impactful on the way that they play. So I think Indiana is going to have to find a way to almost mix what these new schools are bringing and also what classic Big Ten basketball is. And I think if they figure out how to do that well, I think Indiana could be with these transfers coming here now, like, Indiana already looks like a force, an unstoppable force in the Big Ten. But I think what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to figure out how to mush together Big Ten play and, I guess, former Pac-12 play, since the Pac-12 is no longer existent. But I think with their new additions, I mean, they're like, two of their top transfers are from the Pac-12. So I think that for Indiana is really good. Their future looks really bright, I think, next year for college basketball. And that is all I have for today. Hopefully there's some more crazy stuff that goes on. I'm going to try to go to the Little Five. Might report on some of that. I've never actually been to the Little Five, though, which is kind of surprising, I think, just because, I'm a junior, so you think I would have gone at least once up until this point, but I just haven't been able to buy a ticket. But now I can buy a ticket, so I'm going. But yeah, I'll see you guys next week. We'll workshop, I guess, on what we're going to talk about next week, because there really isn't a whole lot going on.